There's still an active recovery effort underway, and it's going to take a very, very long time for the hill country of Texas to get back to where it was, if it can even do that. But so many questions are still being asked, even as people are still missing. I wanted to get with America's Pastor Max Lucado, oakhillschurch.com. Pastor, it's good to see you again. Hopefully you're doing okay through all of this.
I'm doing well. I wish we were visiting under different circumstances, but I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Uh, I'm doing well as well. My family and I, we live close to the Guadalupe, but nowhere near where this thing happened. We're about an hour south. And where the Guadalupe is, where we are, it certainly surged and it got very high. But you can't expect what we just had happen. I've had Dan Patrick on, the lieutenant governor. I've had meteorologists on who talked about it. This was almost not predictable. Just your initial thoughts when you heard about what was going on, very close to where you and I live.
Exactly. I'm about like you, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. I could be at the Guadalupe River or be in Kerrville within 30 minutes. So
Right.
we have a long history, just like you do, at the Guadalupe River. Our church has had many retreats and baptism services and weddings and conferences. We love the good people of the hill country in that area and love the Guadalupe River. And when I first heard about this, to be honest, I wasn't paying attention to the news. I knew there had been a flood,
Right.
but a friend of mine texted me about midday on the 4th of July and said, Max, you need to be sure and pay attention. 23 people have lost their lives in this flood. I had no idea, Joe. I had no idea. I had not been paying attention. And that's when it caught my attention. And I, like you, have been paying attention ever since.
It is Pastor Max Lucado, America's Pastor, oakhillschurch.com. I've been here 20 years now, since 2005. We've never seen anything like this. In fact, for 4 or 5 years there, Pastor, we didn't get any rain at all. We were like, is that ever going to rain? I know that in 98, before I came, there was a flood. In 87, there was a massive flood, similar to this one, but not nearly as bad. As Christian people, as good people, as people of faith, when you see something like this happen, where the number could end up being well over 200 people lost, the question becomes why? You look to the heavens and say, why? These are little girls, many of them, 27 now gone from that camp, who were Christian children singing Christian hymns and songs and enjoying a camp. Why, Pastor? And how do you answer that?
I know. And this is the question that I'm responding to. Even this evening, we're having a prayer service, a special prayer service on behalf of these victims. I think there's 2 or 3 ideas that I've turned to through the years that have been helpful. One is that we really do live in a fallen world.
Yes.
This is not the Garden of Eden. It was, and someday it will be. But we're in that in-between time in which we live surrounded by nature that's longing to be restored to its original splendor, and surrounding by people who struggle. Now, many times we go through struggles that we did not cause. Those little girls in that Camp Mystic Camp, they are absolutely innocent. And all those people, they did not cause this. It's one thing to suffer as a result of over drinking or overstimulating, but it's something else entirely. And so it can be a challenge spiritually when we face these types of disasters. And the first thing that I always urge people, and I'll urge our church tonight, I'll say, cry out to God. You know, a third of the Psalms in the book of Psalms are Psalms of what we call lament or complaint. Typical one is Psalm 130 and verse 1 that says, out of the depths I cry to you. Sometimes we pray out of the mountaintops,
Right.
but in this case, we pray out of the depths. God is not put off by our complaints. He's really not. And it's okay to say, God, this hurts. This doesn't make sense. I'm brokenhearted over this. And I urge people to get right and get honest with God, get in God's face and tell him this isn't right. And his response to you will be, you're absolutely correct. It's not right, but it will be someday.
America's Pastor Max Lucado. Go to oakhillschurch.com and see how you can help. They've got a relief effort happening too. You mentioned the children. I mentioned the children. I'm the father of 5 daughters. I've got 2 grandkids. I can't imagine something like this happening to such innocent people. And then you also mentioned the others. You got families that saved up all year. Let's go and camp out by the river. You've got people that are camp directors who gave their lives to try to save lives, and many of them did save lives before they perished. We can't, as human beings, wrap our brains around it. But you said something that really jumped out at me. We can look to God and say, hey, what the heck? We can say that? We can complain?
We can complain. In fact, chronologically speaking, the book of Job was probably written before the book of Genesis. Nobody knows for certain, but you can make a case that the book of Job is the oldest book in the Bible. Not listed in the table of contents that way because they're not listed chronologically.
Right.
But the book of Job is a book of suffering. It's a book about suffering. And we know that God allowed that suffering to come to Job, an innocent man. And all of those chapters in which he is lodging his complaint and his friends are telling him to complain, God does not tell Job, you cannot complain. He receives the complaints. Then at the end of the book, though, Joe, he basically tells Job, there are things going on here you do not understand. There are things going on here you do not appreciate. You simply don't have the capacity. And I think a part of processing something like this is acknowledging we do serve a good God. He is wiser than we are. There are things going on we cannot comprehend. And his ultimate answer to human suffering is found not in this life, but in the next. Because
Pastor, I've got to stop you because that's the hardest thing for a guy like me. I've been communicating for 36 years. I do this for a living. I don't like to not understand things. You don't like to not understand things. Your congregation doesn't like to not understand things. That is the ultimate faith, isn't it? Just accept what you don't understand.
It is. There's a great little book in the Bible called Habakkuk. We're studying that book right now at church. And last Sunday, my daughter preached on Habakkuk. And he's complaining for 3 chapters about the problems that Israel's enduring. But then at the very end of the book, he says, but even if things don't change, I will praise you. You know, we have either 2 types of faith. One faith says only if. I've had people say, I will only love God if he does this, or only if God saves or saves my job or heals my body will I love him. But that's not faith. That's conditional relationship.
Right.
Faith says, even if God doesn't do what I want him to, I'm going to trust him. And of course, the big point that we make as believers is that Jesus Christ entered our world, and he felt suffering to a degree that we'll never know when he hung on the cross. And so he proved that he understands what we're going through and that God hears our prayers when we cry out to him.
It is Pastor Max Lucado, of course, America's Pastor. Go to oakhillschurch.com. Pastor, I haven't spoken to any of them directly yet. I haven't tried. I'm not going to until the time is right. But I expect I'll talk to some of these families. I expect you'll talk to some of these families who lost these little girls or their family members or first responders who perished. What do you say to somebody when you're there with them, other than, you try to commiserate the best you can, give them a hug, show them support? What do you say?
It is so hard. The hardest job I've ever had as a pastor is a eulogy for a child. It's just so difficult. There's a man in Corpus Christi named Jonathan McCombs, and he lost his family in the Wimberley flood in 2016.
Right.
His wife was lost, his 2 children were lost, and he survived. And he spoke at the funeral for his own family. And I've kept a copy of that because it was so amazing. And in essence, and he spoke for a good 10 or 15 minutes, but the core of it was, I'm choosing to believe that God is still in control and that God still loves the world. That's basically his decision. I'm choosing to believe. Well, right now, today, Jonathan is on the banks of the Guadalupe, a part of the search team, because he knows what it's like. And he's turning his tragedy into ministry. I don't have a simple answer. I would not even try to give any parent a bumper sticker answer.
Yeah, right.
I would say, you know what? This pain is going to be with you forever. I'm so sorry. If I would
Yeah.
say anything, I would say God lost his son too, and he understands.
It is Max Lucado. We always appreciate the time and the access, Max. Go and get all the books that he does. We're on talking about what happened here in Texas in the hill country with the flooding. We haven't recovered all the bodies yet. President Trump yesterday said, hopefully, that maybe there's still a chance we can find somebody, but those chances get slimmer as we go. I don't know what the final death toll is going to be, but I know that this area is absolutely shattered by this. How does the area as a whole, how does the community, now we've already come together as a community. I'm sending out links all the time how you can go and help out. People can go to oakhillschurch.com and find out about your relief efforts. We came together as Texans do. We came together as Christians and Jews and everybody else in between does. We came together as community members. But what are the steps, Pastor, to making a semblance of normalcy in this area? It's going to take a long time, but what are the first steps?
It's going to take a real long time, but we always do pull through. I mean, look at Hurricane Harvey.
Yes.
Look at the flood we just described, the one that came through in 2016. It does take time, and it is a mark. I've already read this is the worst flood disaster in the history of Texas. Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
And who would have ever thought? But we're doing the right things. I mean, there's over 400 people right now walking up and down the Guadalupe. They're turning away supplies. A lady in our church took a horse trailer full of supplies up to Center Point, and they told her, we don't have a place to put it. We have so many supplies. I'm not the authority on that, so don't not give, just in case you heard me say that. Check it out first, though. But our South Texas citizens are being so kind, so sacrificial, and so generous. But at some point, we're going to realize that the search and rescue is going to be a search and recovery, and then it's going to really hurt. And we're going to just have to keep praying and sticking together, and learn a lesson. You know, again, out of my pay grade, but I think we will learn a lesson about how to monitor these rivers in a better way.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We had Dan Patrick on yesterday, as I said. He said that, yes, a siren system, I think, is necessary. Yes, we will pay for it from the government of Texas and if communities can't afford them. Because what happens is, Pastor, we get so reliant on technology, as you know. We're using technology now to do this interview. But at 1 o'clock in the morning on the banks of the Guadalupe, and you're out there camping out or singing songs with your friends, nobody's looking at their phone. Their phones might be dead. There might not be good cell service. And to rely on alerts through something that is not audible, something that won't jerk you out of bed and say, look, you've got to go find higher ground. I think you've got to change something and go back to the old days before relying on technology. Tornado zones have loud sirens that are going to startle you and make you get up out of bed and move. Is that, do you think, the right solution? Let's make sure there's something that will wake you up and get you out.
Joe, am I not correct that Comfort has a similar system? I've been in Comfort at noon, and just for a few seconds, that alarm goes off just to test me every day.
Well, I believe they're hit and miss. They're not in every community, and certainly anything near the riverbank or anything near a flood zone or a hurricane zone, you should have these things because, again, nobody at 4 o'clock in the morning when this actually hit is looking at their phone wondering, is this going to hit me?
And those kids, you know, at Camp Mystic, they take the phones away to increase the quality of the experience. And so, we've got to do something so that when this happens again, we'll be better prepared.
I know that you've got training happening at Oak Hills Church. It's today, tomorrow, Saturday of this week. Volunteers can go there at, I guess it's 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 6:30, and then 9 a.m. on Saturday. They go there and get a training to go and help out in the recovery effort. How does this work?
Well, they're learning to muck.
What is that?
MUCK, where you go in with particular equipment, shovels and brooms and special cleaning supplies. And you know what a house looks like after it's been flooded. You know how the baseboards are ruined and how everything is stinky. And well, there's a way to clean that house that gets it ready for reparation. And so that's our team. I'm not on the disaster relief team. We've got a great one, though. And they said of all the things we can do, we can train people to do this. So the church is buying the equipment, we're training the leaders, and then people will be given assignments where they can go and muck out these homes that have been victimized by the flood.
Now, I've seen houses after floods. You're right. When the water goes in there, you're left with inches, if not feet, of dirt. The
Oh,
walls are all, I mean, you've got to go and eradicate any mold that might be coming on to try to save these homes and get them back up and running. Is not going to be easy. Any building, not just a home. So go and find out more about this. Go to oakhillschurch.com, oakhillschurch.com. Also, you can send funds and supplies. I would give the big long address, but you're in the car right now probably listening to me, so you're not going to remember that. Just go to oakhillschurch.com, oakhillschurch.com. Again, Oak Hills Church is all one word. It's Pastor Max Lucado. Just give me some final words on this if you don't mind, because again, people are still saying why. People are still angry. People are still, there are some first responders that are eating maybe a meal a day as they do 18 hours a day out there trying to help as much as they can. What's the final word as we continue to watch this recovery effort, try to bring us back to, again, like I said earlier, some sense of normalcy?
For the sake of your own emotional well-being, I would urge you to do three things very quickly. Number one, complain. Complain to God. He's big enough to take it. Let him have it. Tell him this isn't right. You will hear him say, I agree with you. And then number two, return to your faith. Say, Lord, I know it. This is terrible, but I'm going to still believe in you. I'm going to believe in you because you've been good to me. It's very important to reach down and grab that faith. And then number three, pray specifically. We're beginning to see names of the victims. It might be advisable to just print out a list and say, Lord, would you please bless these families, and read those names out loud. And I think in the spiritual world, I do believe there's a devil. I do believe that he wants to take a moment like this and create even further anger and rancor. But you can deal with that spiritual issue by telling him you still believe in God, and you can talk to God on behalf of the families of these victims.
I said last thing, but I mean it this time. It's America's Pastor Max Lucado. I wonder how you would advise the parents of the little girls that didn't pass away, that thankfully were saved. Because those little girls, I've seen them weeping. I've seen them, I wish we didn't have cameras in their faces right now. But there's got to be some sort of survivor's guilt. What does what does the community say to these little girls?
You're going to have to be with them. You're going to have to sleep close to them. You're going to have to help them articulate what they remember from that moment, and then pray with them into that moment. You're probably going to need some pastoral help, some professional help, some counseling help. And that's fine. That's okay. The key is to urge those children to express and not suppress. And of course, don't let them at all feel embarrassed or shame or guilty because they survived. That wasn't their call. It wasn't their call.
Amazing advice. It's America's Pastor Max Lucado. Go and check out oakhillschurch.com. See how you can help. And if you're in the area where our flagship is, make sure that you come to the church and see how you can help out with the mucking out process, which is going to be quite a process. Pastor, thanks a million. We always appreciate the time. Let's do it again soon.
Thank you, my friend. You're doing a great work.
I appreciate you. Thank you. We're back after this. Stay right here.